Here we are for another round of the 70s versus the 90s. In this round, it's a real gangster with Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather versus Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas. And man, like I said, it's a real gangster round because both of these movies are legendary in their own right. You know, starting off with The Godfather, definitely the movie that put Francis Ford Coppola on the map in a film like he almost it didn't even end up directing and shit. But and also based off the book by Mario Puzo, the film it is a masterclass in like how to make an epic, and tell like a grand scale of filmmaking. It's something that Coppola is good at, kind of like on a scale like a Ridley Scott, all style and no substance, but there are sequences in this film that are magnificent. Of course, it was a huge cultural phenomenon, and it made a lot of the actors in it. This was like only the second film that Al Pacino was in, and the performance that he gives in this one is extraordinary. To only be your second film, and just because the Michael Corleone has like the biggest character arc in the film, because he's the one that he's not even in the family business, but then by means of circumstance he ends up getting back into it. One of the great sequences when he shoots the Saluzzo, and then played by Al Letteria, and then the cop played by Sterling Hayden. That's a great fucking sequence. And the movie opens with one of the most memorable sequences. The whole the day of my daughter's wedding type shit. Sicilian, all that shit. And of course this might be Marlon Brando's best performance. If we're talking objectively, there's only really two right answers, and we'll just say it's the best performance he has where he's not playing a snitch. And so the shit with the cat, it's just pure fucking Brando that nobody would have gotten, and of course, Robert Duvall is great, very great understated performance as Tom Hagen, and all the background characters too, like, fucking John Morley is the movie producer Walls, that they put the fucking horse head in the bed because he won't let dude be in the movie and shit, and fucking Richard Conte is Barzini, there's, and Abe Vigoda is fucking Tessio, all the fucking, like, it's very well done. Like, the movie itself, it's like you watch it, it's sequence after sequence, but it does kind of drag in parts, and at times a little indulgent on the cinematography and the scenery, is like we get where you're at, and recreating of 40s. In a way, it's kind of like a way to like embrace Hollywood without embracing Hollywood, because you're nostalgic for the era that you grew up in type shit, and this is what kind of the era that Coppola and all those guys were born in, so it's like even in the anti-Hollywood new Hollywood of the 70s, they were still recreating their childhood, which was just kind of fashioned fucking Hollywood flair. And but the cinematography by Gordon Willis is absolutely stunning, taking what he did with Alan J. Pakula and Clute, and taking it a step further. And and that end sequence with fucking where he's having everybody murked during the christening, it's beautiful stuff, masterclass in filmmaking. But here's where we get in the argument of art and all this shit. Probably could have shaved a good 30 minutes off of that movie, because then we jump ahead to Goodfellas, where the movie just instantly just announces itself. It moves like a fucking bullet, like you're there right in the middle of it, the thick of it. It just like you hear this guy telling this telling the story about how he got into all this shit and stuff, and then the fucking, and yet again all this, mind you, these movies, if you haven't seen these movies by now, go see them before you watch these fucking videos and shit, but because they are masterpieces of the cinema. This is probably the hardest round I've ever had to do, because I'm about to blow smoke up both asses and then have to kick one, so it's very, very hard shit. But what's beautiful about Goodfellas is, because narration itself is lazy writing. Any like top-notch screenwriter will tell you this, unless it's like film noir, and even then it's still kind of lazy writing, because when you see film noir done without the voiceover, it can be done. So that's neither here nor there, but the point of the voiceover in this one is you don't realize it till the end. You think, oh, this guy's just talking to the audience, and this is where a lot of people, especially the critics, kind of fall ignorant of the genius of Scorsese, is that like where it feels like this guy's glorifying this shit to the audience. He's really just recounting to the FBI why he got into this shit, why it was so, he's justifying it the whole fucking time. He's justifying it to the feds more so than he is to the audience. The audience is just there by circumstance and shit. And plus, the acting is way you believe these guys more as these guys than you do like God. Like, Brando, like, arguably one of the greatest actors of all time. He can pull it off. But like, look at Paul Sorvino. That guy, other than Paulie, was he good at anything else? He just kind of, and it could be just because that may have been the first thing I saw him in. But the dude absolutely crazy. You can't hardly see him in anything else. Joe Pesci kind of the same way. Joe Pesci is way more psychotic than James Caan in The Godfather, but yet you'd still rather hang out with Joe Pesci than James Caan. That's fucking crazy. That right there is the whole thing about, like, The Godfather might be a better movie than Goodfellas, but Goodfellas is a lot more enjoyable of a watch, and that's saying something because it's about a fucking rat, because if we're just going off of like, what, oh, fuck snitches and it's Godfather all the way, but if we're putting on a fucking movie, it's Goodfellas over Godfather any fucking day, because Scorsese, what he had did at this point is something he had started toying with back when he did Raging Bull, was how to make an interesting biopic. How can you like cram 30 years worth of material into under 3 hours? It's impossible. But he manages to do it in 2.5 hours. 30 minutes less than what Coppola did with The Godfather. And at the same time, giving you a lot more history and richness of the characters. Like, you're seeing, like, all through the eyes of Ray Liotta's character, who arguably, now, if we're talking body of work, Al Pacino's the better actor. But if we're comparing, like, Al Pacino is Michael Corleone and Ray Liotta is Henry Hill, Ray Liotta's performance might be better, but they're also both actors that were still early on in their career. Much like how The Godfather made Al Pacino, Goodfellas basically made Ray Liotta. If you needed a psycho for the 90s, he was like the equivalent of, like, if the Marlboro Man had a mental block or some shit, that's basically what Ray Liotta was. And of course, Robert De Niro at the top of his form, and Joe Pesci in an Academy Award-winning performance, hands down the greatest Academy acceptance speech ever, But there's so, I can split hairs on this shit, all night and day, but at the end of the day, it's got to be like Goodfellas for me. Because, like I said, The Godfather is far from a shitty movie, but I do think it's highly overrated. I think it's about 30 minutes too long. There definitely could be some shit. Because, like, the thing about Goodfellas is there's no dead space. Like, that movie fucking starts like a bullet. It doesn't necessarily end like a bullet, even though it got fucking Pesci doing the great train robbery homage thing. But because that's the thing about most of these movies like that Scorsese would make, like Goodfellas and Casino and even The Wolf of Wall Street, they kind of tend to slow down in the third act, but that's kind of the point, because that's when everything's crashing down, and that's where I think a lot of the critics kind of tune out, is once you get to that third act, well, it's not fun anymore. But you see, that shit what says more about you, because what's cool about Goodfellas is it doesn't shy away from, like, why this lifestyle is attractive. Like, why the fuck have we made so many goddamn movies about it, And it doesn't pull any punches. Like, Lorraine Bracco is brilliant as Karen, it's like, most women would have been freaked out by this shit. It kind of turned me on. It's a very brutally honest film to be as phantasmagorical as it fucking is. What Goodfellas is it's pure cinema. The beauty of Scorsese is the fucking pope of cinema. And the thing about, man survived the fucking 80s, he survived cocaine, he survived all this fucking shit to make Goodfellas the fucking masterpiece of his career. I mean, he made great movies after that, and he made great movies before that. But that man hit magic with Goodfellas that he probably never thought he would ever get in a million fucking years. Just those sequences alone. like sequence after sequence, where Godfather may be like 3 or 4 great sequences. Goodfellas is nothing but great fucking sequences. That Copacabana sequence where they're fucking going through the thing, you know, that is miles ahead of any fucking like wedding scene. Like the wedding scene in Goodfellas is so brief, but then you get like great all the side characters and shit. Scorsese used his mom in the film, and she's fucking fantastic in it. You know, Frank Vincent, he's always the fucking asshole. You know, the shine box scene, that's one of the greatest fucking like moments in like any fucking mob movie of all time. You know, and you know, just that fucking shit, that whole fucking I don't want to get blood on you for. After all that shit, dude, Pesci fucking insane, cold, stone cold. What? Funny how? Like I'm a clown. I'm here to amuse you. Like, you know, what the fuck is so funny about me? You know, that kind of shit. That is why Goodfellas beats Godfather. Like, you know, like I said, Godfather's a great movie, but also too, you know, Martin Scorsese's probably the greatest director of all time, at least the greatest one living now. And you know, there's a few motherfuckers that an argument can be made for, but you know, dude's the Pope of cinema. You know, nobody knows cinema like Scorsese. And you know, just even that Copacabana sequence they're going through, all that shit, just the atmosphere and just the blocking of that, and just to the music. You know, even with that scene where Paulie takes over the fucking restaurant and shit, and he's discussing, and Ray Liotta's narration, and it goes, everything's perfect. There's a balance, there's a flow to it. It's something that The Godfather doesn't have. Now, granted, Coppola was searching for that shit. I'd argue he found it in Godfather 2, but that's for a whole other fucking episode. Right now, it's Goodfellas just won this motherfucking round because it's the fucking best. You know, I could go on and gush. I don't have long enough in this video. I don't like them to go longer than 15 minutes. I could be talking 30 minutes how great it is, how better Goodfellas is than The Godfather, but because it's the fucking movie. So if anybody's keeping score on that shit, it's now 18-20. 90s are up by 2, and they seem to be fucking holding strong. The next big main event that I got is going to be Badlands versus True Romance. So, you know, like I said, the 90s have been kicking ass recently. You know, 70s come back here and there. And, you know, but who knows, man? Like, the biggest takeaway from this, Marty's the motherfucking GOAT. You know, like, greatest of all time. Like, you can't fuck with him. The fucking Pope of cinema. And so, like I said, if I've said anything wrong, something you disagree with, whatever, feel free to eviscerate me in the comments. I don't give a shit. This is just me having fun. You know, I got to know right now, though, like I may have been gaslighting myself, but, you know, who knows? Like I said, the 70s can always come back, but right now the 90s are riding high. So, and if you got any suggestions, let me know. This is all a doctoral thesis, but right now I'm just sweating bullets for the answer.